Morning guys, we've got the EV sales numbers for January in China, and I saw this article here which says Chinese domestic EV makers report January sales decline following Tesla price cuts. And I think this article, to be frank, and I'm a Tesla investor, is a little bit biased, and I'm going to explain why. So for NIO we have around 8,500 cars being delivered in January. That is a little bit softish given that we have, I think, some higher registrations from the weeklies, but there can always be a little bit of a time lag in between. So let's take it at what it is. What I've done here is actually I have compared it to the year-over-year numbers as well as previous periods in which there was Chinese New Year. Because frankly, the whole industry is now down between 50 to 60% in the numbers compared to last month. So the December numbers, that's usual, like Q4 is always, the big ramp. But also some of these numbers, if you compare them year over year, are down also on a sequential basis. So what I've done here is have listed the monthly deliveries. For example, here for NIO, January 2001, 7,000, 2022, 9,600, and then 2023, 8,500. So if you were just to look at this number, comparing 9,650 deliveries to 8,500, then you would say, well, this is actually a year-over-year decline, right? And it's getting reported in various medias as such. But then if you're doing, for example, an adjustment for how many business days each of these months actually had, then you will see that in 2022, January had 21 business days and 2023 had only 18 business days. And so the deliveries per day would actually be 460 per day in 2022 versus 473 in 2023. So it would actually be a slight increase of 3%. However, what we actually have to compare here are the actual periods in which Chinese New Year happened, so in which most of the holiday times actually took place. And I've highlighted that in yellow. So here, for example, in 2021, mostly in February. In 2022, it was also in February. And now this year, it's actually mostly in January. And so what you can come up with here, if you compare the Chinese New Year year-over-year growth rates, then instead this means that NIO last year, Chinese New Year over Chinese New Year, grew by 17%, and this year compared to last year during Chinese New Year grew 23%. So that's actually a growth that happened here for NIO, comparing the same period of time roughly, although it's been, as I said here, different periods of the year. Actually, that's just due to the nature that Chinese New Year is taking place at different times. However, for example, just in a comparison here to an EV competitor, although I must also emphasize that NIO is comparing in a totally different segment, XPeng average sales prices around $37,000. So that's much lower, addressing a lower end segment, and XPeng vehicle margins are only around 12% versus NIO 18% and should be growing again. And so how did XPeng fare during this time? So basically, you would also see, of course, if you just look at the numbers here, a very big decrease between 2022 and 2023. Even if you adjust it for the delivery days, 615 versus 219, so over minus 50% deceleration there. If you just look plainly at January over January growth numbers, but adjusted for Chinese New Year, it's looking a little bit better here for XPeng. So in the past, they've been growing almost 200%. I think that's also created lots of this hype with this company. But this year, they're actually slowing down significantly, minus 25%, although it's a little bit better even than this actual data suggests. So This is why I think we cannot conclude that this is an impact of Tesla price cuts. Will those articles also write next month that actually we see more than 100% year-over-year growth rates? Just because, of course, last year in February, in the last years in February, there was Chinese New Year, and then this year there is not Chinese New Year, so we can expect high growth numbers year over year sequentially again, right? But of course, nobody will be writing articles about how Tesla price cuts have been causing this. In the end, we'll have to see how Tesla price cuts really affect the market. I think a little bit more over the long term, so we need more data points for that. I'm sure it will put some pressure also on some competitors, closer competitors like BYD and Xpeng. But my hope would be that actually it's converting more people that would consider usually a gas car to actually switch to EV, that is becoming more and more affordable, because that's actually the real vision of Tesla in my point of view. Let me talk about two more things. One is people were saying, well, Jin Hong basically mentioned that 300,000 cars have been rolling off the site, and if you do the maths, then we don't get 300,000 deliveries yet. Where are the missing cars? The answer is I don't know it myself either. What I could imagine is that those cars are actually in Europe, and that's where they don't count towards deliveries. And NIO doesn't even publish subscription numbers. So that might be the case, that actually the 300,000th car has already been delivered. I don't know it. Maybe it also hasn't been delivered. That was one point. And then lots of talk about ET7 numbers that have been declining. I've actually had this in our Patreon community. So I posted this in the all members chat. And as you can see, for example, here highlighting that the Porsche sales of the Taycan model, so the EV model, have also sharply declined in the last couple of months. So this is only until Q3 data. So this is a high price tag EV, a luxury EV. And I would say lots of ET7 customers should be in the same, let's say, affluent user base. They might decide either between the Taycan and the ET7. Similarly priced, ET7, of course, a little bit more affordable still. However, what you can see is basically that also these high net worth buyers have become a little bit more cautious now in the economic downturn and due to zero COVID policies. So it will take some time until those higher and bigger tickets are actually coming back. I think it for now, that's why Alibaba and so on is doing very well, because now there's a small ticket consumption purchases are coming back. That's also why Tesla cut prices, but not only that's not the only reason why Tesla cut prices, but you can also see that Tesla's order backlog was essentially running dry. So there was almost no orders and backlogs for China, which is red here, according to Troy Tesla on Twitter. So you can see NIO is operating within these economic boundaries, and so they cannot flee from that. You can see that this is an overall industry issue. The good news is over time this should work out now that zero COVID has been abandoned and possibly the consumption is going back, and then we'll see how well these NIO models will be selling. So my personal view is that the ET7 will be bouncing back. Of course, has been a bit a slow share in the sales recently, but yeah, makes sense how it is. That's it for now. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next one.